Well, I'm very excited to have our special guest here today. He needs no introduction. Everybody will, I'm sure, be familiar with Mr. Brian Forrester. I'll be posting this both on my YouTube and on my Patreon for everybody. So also Brian will be getting a copy if he wants to post it on his channel. So this is
Sure.
on the Exploring the Ka on YouTube, which is my YouTube channel. And also we have Hidden Incators, which is part of Brian's website and channel, which I'm sure everybody might be familiar with. It's really a pleasure to have you here today, Brian.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah. First, before we even get started, I don't know. I've known about you for many years. I've seen some of your videos. I'm busy myself, and I have a small child, so I don't get to watch too much of it. But just your last name was interesting to me. I mean, it literally means forest, right? Or like a person that handles the forest.
Yeah, it means gamekeeper in German.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's interesting. That's very interesting. So it's almost like almost embedded in your name to be like part of the sacred groves and the sacred sites. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's interesting. So I mentioned previously that you had even got into you were able to get some of the copper products that I work with and make. How they originated kind of right into your work. The very twist that we used with the copper that's involved with the copper comes from what they call the royal or sacred cubit in ancient Egyptian. The very twist. You're familiar with the Giza pyramid, of course. The perimeter of the boss stone, that's about the little projective stone that's like 70 point something inches above the king's chamber. That twist is used throughout that and throughout the whole pyramid. So that's where we actually get the twist for that copper.
Wow.
Yeah, it actually has a 144 megahertz harmonic frequency, which is like the harmonic speed of light. So it's when you make the twist, instead of if we didn't do the twist, there would be positive and negative in the copper. By twisting it, you're actually making just a positive charge within the copper. And that's what's used throughout the whole pyramid and through ancient Egypt. Yes, Slim Sperling from the 90s actually found this, and Tesla used that as well. So it ties right into all your work and at all these sacred sites. And I'm very interested to hear some of your findings. First, how did you get involved with just going to Peru and finding with the Paracas skulls? Because do you come from like a science and medicine background originally?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So how did you end up like first leading into getting involved with, because the normal person doesn't come across elongated skulls and things like this. How did you first start getting involved with all this?
Well, I saw photographs of them on TV shows growing up, and that, of course, drew my interest. But I first went to a little museum here on the coast of Peru about 13 years ago, and there was a mummified elongated skull in the museum, which caught my attention. And the museum director said he had more at home. So the next day he brought four more for me to look at. And then I looked up the literature, the academic literature on the internet, and all they said was, these are bound human skulls. And of course, over the course of time, we've been able to figure out that in fact, the original Paracas people were not Homo sapiens sapiens. They were probably a subspecies. And over the course of time, they began to interbreed with normal-looking people. So over hundreds of years, the elongated skull aspect began to disappear.
And these elongated skulls, I've seen some of them. They have the reddish hair, and so some of them, you're saying some of them were born elongated.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen two fetuses so far that were about 8 months old or
Wow.
9 months old that had large elongated skulls. So obviously, that's not the result of head binding. That's a genetic characteristic.
And there's a wide majority or high percentage of them have that auburn red hair?
Yeah, I would say all of them, of the original people. They all had auburn hair.
Well,
Some have even been found that have blonde hair.
wow. So I've been researching like Ugaritic material in ancient history. My whole I'm 43 years old, probably 30 years of my 43 years I've been researching ancient history. Do you think it's possible that um both to the North and South Americas, the Phoenicians could have had like Rephaim kings traveling by boat to the Americas, and they could have somehow mixed with Mesoamerica and even South America, and maybe even some of the megalithic sites in North America? Is it possible Phoenicians could be responsible for that red hair? Because I know like King Og of Bashan and all of these places. I mean, they're related to the Phoenicians, all these giants, possibly from the Bible. You think it's their red hair is what's involved with that, or that's just speculation?
Well, some people speculate that, but we've done genetic testing of the elongated skulls, and they seem to relate to other elongated skulls that have been found around the Black Sea area.
Well,
So that was the biggest finding, was that they were not originally Native American, though the academics want to insist they were. But the other largest elongated skulls in the world have been found around the Black Sea.
well, that
And
would be around
that's where,
that would be around the area where they were from. Yeah.
well, true.
Yeah. Yeah. So because those surrounding tribes, whether they're like Amorites or the Anakim or all these different tribes that you hear about, Phoenicians, I mean, they were traveling all around the Caspian Sea or Black Sea or those areas, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, so that's wow, that's amazing. That's really amazing. Yeah, so the sutures are completely different on those, and their DNA could be far back, even related to biblical giants. Even who knows? Yeah, that's really interesting. So do you think those original sites in the Peruvian areas are pre-flood? Some of those sites?
Yeah, the megalithic sites, definitely.
Yeah, that's intense. So the same thing when I've seen you've been at Baalbek. Now most of that stone at Baalbek is what, limestone?
Yeah.
Now there are some red granite there though, right?
Yeah, there is, and our geologist has identified that as coming from the Aswan Quarry in Egypt.
Wow. Wow. You think it's possible that I know everybody, because the Aswan Quarry, is there two? I've never been to actually Aswan. There's two, there's Elephantine and something else, right? There's two quarries in Aswan, right? On the Nile.
Yeah, there's the little island called Elephantine, but actually all of Aswan is granite. Like the whole city is built on top of granite, so the whole area is granite.
The whole area is granite. Wow. So there's no way. I know it's controversial, but there's no way that the red granite could have came from somewhere else around there. There's no possible way.
According to our geologists, there are also deposits in the eastern desert of Egypt.
Because I know the Romans were getting granite from everywhere.
Yeah, the Romans were actually moving granite from Egypt as well. But the biggest deposit is around the Aswan area.
Yeah, that's intense, because we even have a site. I had shown you one picture here right in the Hudson Valley of New York. I had emailed you a picture of a 60 to 90 ton red granite, pink red granite stone that's balancing on four little smaller quartzite slabs. It's a dolmen.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have any pink or red granite from around this area. Originally, Brian, they were calling it a glacial erratic, but now at the site they actually call it they say it might be a dolmen from the Druids at the site. But I'm thinking that could even have been a Phoenician, possible something related. I mean, it literally looks like a cat, the head of it, and the back of it doesn't, but the front part looks like it was molded. I mean, do you think it's possible that red granite could have been once alive flesh? Like,
No, I don't believe that.
because like I know some people say things like that, but it seems like it's highly crystallized and there's no free metals in it. And maybe sometimes it could have been something like a chemical process could have made it into that stone, right? What made it into rock? A chemical process has to make it. And sometimes when things get like fossilized during a flood, like one of these giants that I'm talking about, maybe they could have turned into what we now know as red granite, or even the fluids in their body could have turned into crystals as they fossilized in that flood, in the mud and everything. That's what I'm saying, because I do know Mud Fossil University, the guy Roger Spur, And I don't believe in all
Mhm.
that stuff, because like you can't look at, I don't believe in all of it, because you can't just look at Google Earth and say, wow, that cave looks like a vagina of a giant. That's ridiculous. I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. But with red granite specifically, I've worked with it a lot. And I think it is possible for something to petrify, especially a giant. If it was a flood during the biblical flood, if they specifically, God took out giants and they were fossilized in that mud, sort of petrified. What if that's where actual granite could come from? Because granite is special. It's not like any other thing for me. It's like highly
Mhm.
crystallized, no metals in it, and it's piezoelectric. They're using it for like these energy tower obelisks. So red granite to me is very special. You don't think there's a
Yeah, that's
possibility?
true. Well, I base my thoughts on what our geologists say, and she says it's
Yeah, they
uh,
won't go there. They won't go there.
no
They won't.
volcanic intrusion. So
Yeah. They won't
um,
go there. Even I'm friends with Professor Chandra Work Robinson. He's a famous astrobiologist and astronomer. And I was asking him, because he's talking about how bacteria gets transported through comets, and it gets thrown throughout all worlds this way. And I was saying, well, maybe even the comets were once biology. And I mean, maybe it's even more to that. And he wouldn't even go there with that. But it was just a speculation of mine. But it's known that comets are transporting bacteria, through space
sure,
worlds, right? So do you think
sure,
some of
yeah.
these sacred sites might be aligned with the transport of comets and the transport of bacteria?
Not as far as I can tell. There seems to be specific alignments of megalithic sites, like in Peru. They're all along what's called the Path of Viracocha, which goes from the northwest to the southeast, like almost in perfect alignment.
Wow.
So that might insinuate that originally uh, the Earth's pole was in a different position when those megalithic sites were created.
Wow. Yeah, I think even Gobekli Tepe, if I'm not mistaken, might have a stone that some people are speculating might be talking about comets on the
Oh,
stone,
it does.
right?
It does. So,
Yeah.
well, that's a major theory, but yeah, there's I think it's the most famous of the stones there that seems to depict a comet.
With the vulture,
And
right?
I,
With the
yeah,
vulture.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because I always thought that might be because I mean, in all honesty, Brian, like we should be silly to think that if they have this megalithic stone technology to do this stone work, that why would they just primitively inscript? Why would they just be for like primitive funerary monuments or for just putting inscriptions certain places? They must be for some more advanced reason, and maybe even has to do with transporting bacteria. That's what real life is through, and it might be even related to comets and different things like that, and it might be related to even free energy. Do you think that any of these energy towers are actual obelisks could be like energy towers and things like this?
What, the Egyptian obelisk?
All out, there's Turkey, Ethiopia, we got them everywhere. I mean, uh, do you think that could be part of it could be like an ancient energy towers or something like that?
Yeah, I think the pyramid system in Egypt were the transmitters of energy, and that the obelisks were the receivers.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. And they would use red granite. I mean, that's most of the obelisks are red granite, I think.
Yeah,
I had written a small book about the ones they brought from Rome and in the one they have in Benevento as well. We even have one in Central Park here, a red granite
that's
obelisk.
right.
Yeah, it's interesting. You've been to the unfinished obelisk in Aswan?
9 times.
Wow, what can you share with me about that? Because I've never been there. I've only read about I think it was found like in the 1920s or something first. They started uncovering it. But what can you share with us about that? Do you have any special new information or any theories about that that you could share with us?
Well, the basic story, that they tell is that Hatshepsut, who was a female pharaoh, commissioned it.
The
But
18th
the
dynasty, right?
Yeah, but the dynastic Egyptians didn't have the technology to be able to carve something like that, 1,200 tons out of the bedrock. They even put little stones around, handheld stones that they say were what were used to shape it. But it's ridiculous because we can see actually the machining marks that were
Wow.
involved. There's also another smaller obelisk that was never finished that shows these major scoop marks as well. So it was some kind of machine that was involved, and obviously pre-cataclysmic.
Wow, that's amazing. There is a ditch around it, right?
Yeah, on both sides. You can actually climb down into the ditch and walk around if you get special permission. So that's always fun.
Do you think that could have been a ditch where some sort of cutting machine went around it into there? Or no, it's not big enough for.
Well, to me, it looks like whatever was doing the cutting was actually a handheld device. I
Oh,
mean,
wow. Oh, because you said the scoops.
yeah, the scoops are perfectly the same width. And I think the ditch is simply the result of the fact that they were quarrying it. And then for some reason, they suddenly had to stop working on the project, maybe due to a major cataclysm. And then that's why it's still sitting there to this day.
Wow. See, that makes me even think more, Brian, that it was almost like clay at one time, this granite. And they were almost like cutting it when it was still not all the way hard yet. That still makes me think about red granite. Like there was a cataclysm and maybe that's just a long piece of some huge giant. It still makes me think that. Wow. That's interesting. That's really intense because it makes me think even more about that. There's so many questions I can ask you. It's as endless, even with the Sphinx. I mean, I seen recently that you're showing that the Sphinx was hollow, right?
Right.
So, in the 1800s, I know some things I read starting in the 1800s, they were talking about secret chambers below the Sphinx, especially in the front of the Sphinx. I know that you've been allowed more access the more times you've gone. Is there anything you can share with us that is related to the Sphinx? Anything special that you can share with especially the front of the Sphinx or it being hollow? And didn't they used to call it like Seshep or something like that, like Seshep Ak a long
Could
time?
be. But yeah, what I do know is it is hollow because there is an opening near the back of it at ground level, which I showed in one of my latest videos. There's a metal ladder inside. One of the archaeologists said he spent 3 weeks exploring inside the Sphinx and then came out and said, I didn't find anything. And then at the front right paw, if you're looking at the head of the Sphinx, they did ground penetrating radar, and there is at least one chamber underneath there. There's also a wooden platform in between the paws that looks like it was installed there because that's the opening to the chamber system that's underneath the Sphinx itself.
Wow, that's intense. That's really intense. Do you think that it's like almost like a key to something else? There could be like it's like almost like the cap to what's really beneath, that there could be all sorts of tunnels and chambers down there that we can't even fathom. I mean, even Edgar Casey talked about a possible hall of records down there or some sort of something down there. Do you think that's possible?
Oh yeah, well, we do know that there's a series of tunnels underneath because I've been inside them before. So I've been under the step pyramid, which shows that there's a tunnel. There's also a newly opened site called the Southern Tomb, which goes down several hundred feet into the bedrock. And there's a series of tunnels with that. That probably connects up to the tunnel system under the step pyramid. There's likely a tunnel system under the Sphinx itself as well. So
Wow.
there's probably a whole network of tunnels going on for miles.
Yeah, that's definitely what I believe as well. I know I'm friendly. I'm friends with Klaus Donna. I've interviewed him several times. I've known him for years. He has a friend that has that ground radar that can look. Has anybody ever done that over there?
He supposedly has done it and supposedly found a whole series of chambers underneath a site at Hawara.
That
And
Lake
supposedly
Morris?
they,
No.
sorry?
That near Lake Morris? No.
No, that's Hawara is around the Giza Plateau
Oh,
system.
okay.
So it's, it's in that general area. But the whole thing is submerged in water now. So there's no actual access to it. But they supposedly, with satellites, have done ground penetrating radar of some kind, and they found this whole series of 3,000 chambers or something like that underneath this one site. It's completely off limits from the tourism. So who knows? The Egyptians tend to hide things that are of the most interest.
Yeah, I find that as well, especially yeah, I agree. I agree. There's this I don't think we're ever going to know the real truth about a lot of the how old do you really? I know Robert Schoch was world famous for saying how old he thought they would be. How old do you actually think they could possibly be? Do you think it could be even like 30,000 years old? Because I always thought the chest of the Sphinx almost looked like it was almost like an old stupa, like this the chest part almost looked like it was like built like almost like a Vedic stupa in a way. And the chest part, I felt like that area was way older, than anybody ever realized. That it could be really, really old. How old do you think it possibly could be?
Well, I think a minimum of 13,000 years. John Anthony West believes that it's about 39,000 years old.
Wow.
So, yeah, so I can't say how old something is, but I can say how, a minimum would be 13,000 years, because that's when the series of cataclysms began. Also, the causeway that comes down from the second pyramid seems to miss the Sphinx on purpose. And so that would indicate that the pyramids were built after the Sphinx was original, then the pyramids were built afterwards.
And do you think it originally was a lion? Because I know I've also read Robert Temple, who's written that he thought it was a jackal originally.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Because that head was actually it does look like something else was there originally, and that was just put on there afterwards somehow. It does look like it didn't belong originally. So do you think originally there was some other head on there and it was much larger?
Yeah, I think it was originally a lion, and was recarved because the head's much smaller in proportion than the body now. So it's way out of proportion, if it was supposed to be what we classically think of as a Sphinx. So yeah, I think the most logical theory is that originally it was a giant lion figure.
And then they changed it with a certain pharaoh to their head. Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever been to the I don't know if it's in Thebes. Maybe it's in Thebes. The Colossals of Memnon, the Amenhotep III's big statues. I think they're called the Colossals of Amenhotep III. Did you freeze? Did I lose you?
The which?
I might have lost you. They're I think they're in Thebes. The Amenhotep III had the big colossal statues of himself. They called them Memnon.
Oh yeah, the Colossi of Memnon.
Yeah, there's. I heard I don't know if it's true. I'm not sure if you know. I was interested in knowing because you know a lot about these sites. At one time there was an earthquake that made a certain harp noise that came out of the bigger one. I heard there was an earthquake in like 27. Mm-hmm. Is that true? And then like there was a Roman emperor that did another like some sort of change to it and it stopped.
Yeah, supposedly they used to, if the wind would blow from the right direction, they would actually sing, supposedly. But the one on the left-hand side is still, it's one piece of stone on a base. The one on the right, the Romans tried to repair, doing a really bad job. But the one on the left is supposed to be 720 tons on top of a 300-ton base.
Wow.
The quarry is supposedly in Cairo, which is 400 miles away. So again, standard academics, they have to have an answer for everything, but quite often their answers are very illogical.
And it seems like that dynasty of Amenhotep III, which is what Akhenaten's father, it seemed like he brought back like a lot of magnificence to that dynasty. Do you think there's something there? He discovered something, or he had contact with some sort of intelligence that led to some of these things being built? Or why this pharaoh that seemed to bring all this change and splendor?
Well, it was more Akhenaten who did that, because his original name was Amenhotep IV. He changed his name to Akhenaten, which
Yeah.
means the shadow of Aten. He was well immersed in the mystery school, so he had access to all sorts of forbidden sacred knowledge. And so he seems to be the one who brought back the idea of there being one God, like a central deity.
Yeah, I know, but his father was originally starting to initiate that
Right.
solar, that solar disk. And like I know that
Right.
his father was like dedicated to Sekhmet or Sekhet.
Mhm.
And he a lot of those statues that we find of Sekhet, like in Karnak and stuff, those always intrigued me because have you ever been into the Temple of Karnak?
Oh yeah.
Into the one black that's one place I am familiar with. The one black I think is it black granite? That's the temple,
I believe so.
right?
Yeah.
And there's certain light that comes from the ceiling in on it at certain times of the
Mhm.
year that light it up. I
Right.
was told that some of these statues at one time they were actually these sacred priests were pouring poison at these statues so nobody can have contact with them. Have you ever been told that by the locals that originally when they were found that there was poison around any of them? Because I know in the Temple of Mut, they
No,
have a
that's
lot of
something new to me.
yeah. I was told that a lot of those old statues, a lot of the Sekhmet statues originally they had like poison, so people when they had contact with them they would get and she was known as the goddess of plagues and destruction and also of healing. So I was interested if you had any knowledge from the locals of them saying that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, is there anything else that you'd like to share that you got coming up in the next few months that you'd like to promote? Or I'm also probably going to broadcast this on my Truth Frequency radio network on Saturday as well. So you're probably a lot of people that will hear you. We broadcast it on iHeartRadio and all the different platforms. So if there's anybody are you doing like some new tours or anything like that coming up that you'd like to promote, or any books that you'd like to talk about?
Sure. Well, we're actually going back to Egypt in March. So we have about 20, I think 25, 28 people signed up so far, but we have capacity for quite a few more. So that'll be good. That'll be my 10th trip to Egypt,
Wow.
which will be exciting. Then we've got 3 tours in Peru next year, one in June, one in August, and one in November.
Wow. Are you ever going to do a tour in Italy? Because my family, we originate from Italy, and I know a lot of the Etruscan areas you might be interested in Tuscany and different places like that, or some of the megaliths that are in like places in Italy. I would be very interested in joining one of those tours if you ever did something in Italy. Is that ever something you ever thought about doing?
Yeah, well, with Patricia Awian, who does the Egypt tour with me, we are planning on doing Italy and Greece
Oh, wow.
at some point in time. Yeah.
Wow, that would be
So
awesome.
looking at the megalithic aspects of both countries.
Even like Sardinia or things like that, because that place is loaded with dolmens and towers and these narugis and all these different things or whatever they're called.
Yeah, that would be a separate tour at some point.
Yeah, that's always been a goal of mine to go to Sardinia. Italy I've been, but Sardinia I've never been. That's definitely something that I'd really want to go to.
Mhm.
Well, thank you, Brian. I really appreciate you joining us. I'd love to be able to do this every once in a while with you because there's so many questions I can ask. I hate to jump around to so many different things.
Sure.
I figured we'd, just touch on a few things that I was curious about. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, if you want to go ahead and contact me in a few months, we can do it again and cover other topics because
Oh,
like you said, we sort of skimmed the surface of a bunch of different things, which
yeah.
probably is of interest to your listeners and watchers, but we can definitely do it again and over and over again if you like.
Yeah, thank you. That would really, I'm very excited to have you here. That would be really happy. I would be really happy if we could do that because it's interesting to have different people that are considered basically experts. And when you've been to so many sites and you've been doing it for so long, I do consider you an expert on certain topics, you know. So
Well, thank you.
I appreciate you coming by, and I hope you're healthy and your family's healthy and everything, since it's really rough times, I know, everywhere right now. So I hope you stay healthy. I know you're traveling a lot. And if you talk to Maria, say hi. She's a good friend of mine. I like Maria. I've known her for many years. And if you contact me private, if you have a PO box or something, I'll send you other copper stuff if you'd like. So just let me know.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's very kind of you. It's very difficult to send stuff to Peru.
I
But
know. You know what? I'm actually going to be sending stuff to Maria soon.
yeah,
I'll send it to her, and the next time she sees you, or she'll give it to you.
okay. Well, actually, Maria's coming on tour in Egypt with us in March, so that'll be
That'll be
perfect.
perfect. That'll be perfect. Oh, cool. That's great.
Then I could use them when I'm in Egypt, because Maria's an expert at using these tools, so she'll be able to give me some tips in the field.
They're great for, there's science behind them. They flood you with electrons. So they pull, like, especially like a coil like this. This is like a bigger coil of one of the hands in the middle. It'll suck the negative energy down through the bottom, and positive down up through the top goes in. So it's like a vacuum of negative energy and negative bacteria. It's actually science behind it. It's nothing woo woo. It's actually like real physics and science behind it. And this is what's like a harmonizer, what I would call a harmonizer. You could put this to harmonize the room, the energy of the room. So yeah, I'll send you some of these products for sure, so you can work with them. And it was a pleasure to have you. I really respect what you're doing and making the world aware of some of our lost and ancient past that most are clueless to. And I really appreciate that. And thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you.
Take care. We'll see you again.
You too.
Brian
Okay,
Forrester,
thanks.
ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Cheers.